to the parade grounds where workers will be there. As part of the day, my guest this morning will help us to understand May Day, what we're doing wrong, what we're doing right, and how we can move on. To my extreme left is the Deputy Executive Secretary of CLOCSAC, that's a Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana, Kwame Kojo Krakeni. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thanks so much for joining us. And then I also have with me Richard Equity Komla Sagudo. He's the head of organization and administration at NAT headquarters here in Accra. Good morning too.
Good morning.
And I hope you're doing great and happy Workers' Day to you.
Same to you.
All right. Now, let's start our conversation this morning. The big focus will be on Kumasi, but let's start this morning and look at May Day. We celebrate the day. For years, it's been celebrated. But the problems that confront workers remain. And one can even say that they have gone even worse, looking at what is happening. Workers being laid off, permanent workers being made casual workers, or all things like that. How do we mark this day and take memories home so that the next year we say indeed we want to mark May Day? Mr. Krakeni, let me start with you. Is it worth celebrating May Day with all the problems that workers go through year after year?
Yeah, thank you. It's very worthy to celebrate a day or dedicate a day to a cause. The May Day is Workers' Day.
Right.
The May Day is like the Christians who put it, St. Joseph at the Workers' Day. A day like this is supposed to recall to mind how far we have gone, and then the things that we met as challenges on the way, and how far we are going again. If you look at the current status of worker, we are enjoying 8 hours. Formerly, it was a whole day. It was not given to us on silver platter. Now we have leave with pay. Formerly, it was not so. Formerly, people worked throughout the weekend. Now it is not so. It was through the struggles that this thing. So May Days are the days that issues are raised for the employer.
Mr. Krakeni, let me let our viewers know that the presidents have just arrived at the program to launch the Nation Builders Corps and at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. That program is expected to see 100,000 young Ghanaian men and women employed in some sectors of the economy. The president has just arrived and will be following closely what's happening at the hall that you can see on your screens there. The president taking the national salute.
Thank you very much. Shall we all take our seats?
100,000 young graduates are expected to pick up some positions and to provide some employment for them. The government says it is part of efforts being made at providing the needed jobs for our young men and women. We'll be crossing over to the various speeches there when the program commences. But the president of that will also leave to join the parade there and to mark May Day. Mr. Krakeni, sorry, I had to cut you in when the president arrived at the Nation Builders Corps launch, but you were making a point about the fact that we need to celebrate May Day. Now, if you look at what workers go through, the key question is, May Day brought some relief, but are we getting more relief or we're going back?
Yeah, to be frank with you and honest, we can't get everything from an employer on on one day. It's very gradual, especially those of us who work under the employer of a government. Your government is your employer, who is having several other things to do, a bouquet of several responsibilities. So we chip in one after the other. You can't get everything all the time. So if you look at May Day celebrations, unions take stock and raise other issues that are actually pinching them.
Did they get results?
Some results are achieved. Some results are achieved. If you take the issue of wage, the daily minimum wage, if you saw the history of the daily minimum, the journey, we are now 9 cedis, 68 pesos.
Yeah.
We are aiming at a living wage. Well, when you go home, what you take can carry you throughout the month without any sweat. It is not easy, because when you go to negotiate these things, several other things are laid on the table. The employer has his role, government has its role, and the employee also have to listen to them, because you don't want to crash the organization.
The labor front.
You don't want to crash the organization for which you are working. Therefore, you concede or you trade off. Then gradually you move towards it. Sometimes, when the things that we are supposed to achieve and it's not coming forth, we know that it can be achieved and it's not coming forth the way we want it, then you see the labor front being
I see.
hot.
I come back to you. Richard, what do you make? He says that we are not getting 100%, but at least we're making some inroads, some progress. So it is worth celebrating. What do you think?
Yes, before I start, let me say hello to and I equal to all Ghanaian workers, especially those who are struggling to keep the economy growing, and from the beats to beats. And let me also say hello to my colleague teachers for whom I am here. It is worth celebrating. Let's not forget that, like he said, you don't get everything at every time. You get bits and pieces, and that is how history of humankind has brought us. When you seek for something today you don't get, you try again, and continuously you get. We should not forget that in this country there have been times where labor issues were handled at the offices of the president or the head of state, with workers having little or no representation at all. Today, at least, we can talk of a joint standing negotiating committee, and at which forum a lot of things are discussed and consensus arrive at, so that it gives the workers that feel that they have rights. The worker has rights just as the employer also has rights. And if the worker is not, or the employee is not invited to sit at a table to dialogue, then that is a great abuse of right. But now that we have that kind of forum, I think we are making inroads. Gradually, we'll get somewhere. So it's worth celebrating.
We will, but if after all these years, today, workers who were permanent workers can be made casual workers, would you describe that as progress?
Yes.
After all these struggles?
Not exactly as progress, but yes, in one dimension there's progress, because at a point in time, some more workers are brought on board, only with the financial clearance. And even with the financial clearance, there's been a negotiation towards that. And then an agreement is reached, and some number of employees are brought on board. The figures, the differences, the figures may not be very significant, comparing those who are being sent off and those who are brought in. But all the same, there's employment going on. There has not been total freeze of employment. The only problem is that the clearance, financial clearance must be sought, and financial clearance is given at a point in time, and then new employees are brought on board. That is a kind of achievement to the labor front.
Mr. Krakeni, let's carry this conversation a bit further. The theme for the celebration is sustainable development goals and decent work, the role of social partners. Some have suggested that some sections of our labor laws, for instance, Section 65 that allows employers to do whatever they want, tramples on the rights of workers. So it affects their right to decent work.
Yeah, thank you. The same Labour Act 651 of 2003 gives ample room for negotiation, consultation, dialogue.
To redress these.
To redress anything that crops up between employee and employer. To the point that there have been a Labour Commission that has been put in place. Labour Commission is supposed to be the arbiter between Labour and employers, so that all issues that are not being thrashed out properly are addressed at that level. Although we can't say all is perfect there either, but we still want to say that we have a forum, so that the Labour Act is one of the best things that has happened to Ghanaians. The rights are there, and responsibility are there. And
you do not see the act impeding workers' development in any way?
What I'm saying is that if a section has something to do with trampling upon the rights, another section has a way of redressing it.
Okay.
Seriously speaking, and we are always having very good relationship. When it is not respected, like if you look at the decent work, the role of social partners, one of the social partners' role is to respect each other, the views, and respect the consensus agreed on, so that you don't set it aside. You must show commitment and loyalty. I mean, the employer and the employee are called upon by the same act. So where there is a problem, it is solved elsewhere if we sort it out. In
some cases, the employer has always taken extreme positions, and the employee is looked down upon.
No.
Already are classic examples.
Okay, if you can give the classic examples, but for now, what we know is that if even the Labour Commission is not doing well to the satisfaction of the employee, they go to court. There are a lot of cases where certain unions go to court and they have their way. We have a case where even a whole His Excellency dismissed 2 workers. And the court told the Excellency, you have erred. You can't dismiss without recourse to the procedure of misconduct or conduct. So the people were reinstated. So even if the forum or platforms established or provided for in the Act are not being done well, you still have the courts, the traditional courts, which we are fully aware as Labour, and we resort to them. There are several instances where we win the cases on procedural grounds.
I see. Richard, and so we can confidently say that the worker is better off by way of decent work today?
To a very large extent, the worker is better off. When we talk of decent work, what are we talking about? A work that can provide a living wage. Yes, we may talk about wages not taken as home, but not in all cases. To a very large extent, there are wages in Ghana here, even though generally they are low, but there are wages which are keeping body and soul together, and which are helping the employee to transform himself to the next level, provided all other things are put in place. So we have that decent work going on, and we have the forum of workers, like I've already mentioned, whereby we go to air our views. We sit down with the employer, and in most cases in Ghana, the government, and we judge together. At the end of the day, we come to a compromise. We come to a consensus. And that is why we have the minimum wage he has talked about. We have the base pay for public sector workers. And that helps a lot as far as labor growth in the labor front is concerned.
But we, Mr. Kraken, you want to quickly come in?
Yeah,
okay.
He is quite right there. What they say, we have the wage that keep body and soul. It doesn't mean workers are happy with it.
So there's something wrong.
Yeah, it doesn't mean we are happy with it.
All the progress.
It doesn't mean that, especially in the public sector, where the minimum wage cannot carry you to the barest minimum level. And we are still working at it. But we have situations in the provisions of the law where there is dangerous work, for example, where you are exposed to it. There is a provision for you to ensure that you are adequately protected or compensated.
I see, but
that's why we have the
Richard, but we keep talking about people on contract, and even some are paid below the minimum wage, and authorities struggling to deal with it. These are all issues that I guess the Labour Front isn't happy with.
Definitely, the Labour Front is not happy with. That's why we continue talking, we continue lobbying, we continue advocating, so that, and we also continue sensitizing our own employees, our own members, that it takes two to move ahead. It takes the labor and the employer to grow the industry, so that as it becomes like the chicken and the egg, when you get more of the income of the returns, then if there's good faith, that will also trickle down to the employee himself. Thank God, our Secretary General of TUC recently at the Labour Forum also called for workers to eschew lateness and absenteeism. Why? So that we can put in our best, so that the cake will grow. The bigger the cake, hopefully, all other things being equal, the more everybody gets of
when it is shared.
When it is shared.
Okay.
Hopefully.
All right. We'll talk more about
how
quickly before we move on to some other
situation where, especially in the private sector, where people are engaged and they are not even given appointment letters.
Right.
And you know, such type of workers engage in it because they feel there is nothing to take home. There is nothing to engage. So it is against the labor law to engage somebody, even on temporary basis, without an appointment letter. The appointment letter will tell you what to do and what not to do. And then what the employer is also supposed to do and what not to do, so that we can use that contract, that document as an evidence to go and say he's trampling upon mine. But because the person is aware that if he even goes to know too much, they will sack him, and somebody is on the line, in the queue waiting, he keeps quiet. That is more prevalent in the public sector, private sector than here.
Where would we put this blame? The worker or private sector employers?
We put it at the private sector employer. Employers are exploitative by nature. So the laws are supposed to help us check that exploitative nature. But if you are asleep, the employer will not wake up and tell you you are beautiful, so come and take an extra salary. You have to use the law to go by. But if I'm talking to you, the informal sector is such that anything goes type of attitude is there. If you go and check the private sector properly, and it is bad for our employers to be doing that. Exploiting. First, you are not paying social security. Some of them are not paying. Secondly, you are not paying very well for the person to go home and come out the next day. You don't have anything concerning the health of the person. There are a lot of things that happen there. But in the public sector, although the wage is low, we make sure that there is a large proportion of decent work.
I see.
It's precisely because the employer is exploitative, especially like we are saying
the
the
private sector employer.
That is why labor should not go to sleep. Continue crying, continue jojo, and continue pushing to let the employer know that the worker also has rights.
But so, haven't you been pushing for too long and we still have these problems around with us?
No, if we quickly want to trace the history of the May Day, it dates as far back in the 18th century, 19th century, where some young leaders stood against the not working more than 8 hours. But it was the struggle, and that has brought us now all of us.
Some were killed.
Some were even lost their lives.
In some countries in Ghana today, outside Ghana.
We have not fought. The Aluta Continua, that is the clarion call.
That's the call. But yeah. So you think that we'll get to a point where we'll be able to overcome the exploitative nature of the private sector employer?
Very hopeful.
We will.
It's possible.
Get to the point.
Yes, we will get to the point.
We're not too slow.
Especially when the private sector is unionized.
If we do our homework well.
But Mr. Kraken, you know, and Richard, I'm sure you also know that in some cases, private employers are stopping their workers from unionizing.
Yes, if you are aware of that.
Let me get Richard to take.
It's because of the unemployment, the heavy unemployment that we have, and like you said, knowing very well that people are on the line waiting to take over, no matter how small it is. But that is where even labor is needed more. The coalition is needed more. That is where the unity is needed more. So that when it comes to a point when in unison, we all crowd foul to that kind of treatment, then the employer will sit back. Or we come to a point that even if I have nothing to go by, we can still, for the sake of tomorrow, we can still sacrifice and teach a little bit of lesson to the employer. Then he sees up. Then he realizes that it has happened in Ghana. Many a time strikes go on, and then the employer has to change his stand or soften his stand. That is the work of the labor. And it's a continuous fight. It's not a one-day fight.
Mr. Kraken, this continuous fight and the fact that workers continue to suffer, that exploitative private sector employer is there. They are not even allowing these workers to form unions so that they can even fight for their rights. So if labor says it is working at stopping this, what can you say is the achievement? What have you done so far?
Yeah, the achievement, if you want to mark it, we are still below expectation. But the issue is that we cannot get all at the same time. Even to get your colleague workers in the private sector or informal sector to know that they need to be unionized is a big journey. For them to know, get aware that they must unionize to get one front.
It takes 10 years?
It takes more than 10 years.
Oh,
they are not ready.
It can take more than 10 years.
The person is willing to be in that state than for him to be sacked because he's unionized. Even in the public sector, there are certain sectors of the offices, positions, who shun labor. They shy away from labor. The person protects himself. He forgets that unity has a lot of strength. So the awareness is gradual.
I see. Let me quickly hold gentleman in the studio, Mr. Kojo Krakeni, Deputy Executive Secretary of the Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana, and Richard Equity Komla Sagudo. He is at the NAT headquarters, and then we'll take you to Kumasi, where the Nation Builders Corps is being launched. The Employment and Labor Relations Minister, Ignatius Bafuwa, is addressing the gathering now.
Which was launched in 2017, unemployment rates in Ghana as of 2015 stood at 11.9% of the labor force. The survey further indicates that 25% of the unemployed are within the youth category, and that about 11.7% of jobs are even underemployed. This confirms the ESA report I alluded to earlier, that is, unemployment is highest among school leavers, especially in their early years after national service. Mr. President, the emergence of NAPCO, therefore, cannot be more timely and accurate as it addresses the frustration, confusion, lack of hope, and direction for our youth. Therefore, your intervention is more apt and appropriate. More importantly, I wish to seize this opportunity to commend you and your able team for this initiative. Mr. President, the good news is that your government has made significant strides in addressing the unemployment situation in Ghana. Between January 2017 and March 2018, Mr. President, your government has facilitated the creation of 1,096,404 jobs in both the public and private sectors through various interventions. Mr. President, for the purposes of the press, I want to repeat this. That, Mr. President, your government, between 2017 and March 2018, has facilitated the creation of 1,096,404 jobs. And this happened within the formal economy. So what happened within the informal economy is not even accounted for here. Mr. President, I once again want to congratulate you for this initiative, and I want to believe that if there is any single intervention which addresses the school to work transition in our country, we can't have any better program than NAPCO. Thank you. Before I assume my seat, the details of the jobs created is here with me. The press can take copies and make it available to the public. Thank you.
Another round of applause for the Honorable
That
Minister.
was the Labour Minister there, Employment and Labour Relations Minister Ignatius Bafo at the Nation Builders Corps. And of course, if you were one of those who was waiting for the president when he told the media that he's yet to get official figures of jobs that have been created, you just got that information in May. We're being told that the formal sector has created 1,096,000 jobs, 404. I guess we'll be taking a look at those issues into deeper details later on. But my guests are still in the studio here. Richard Equity Komla Sakodo is the head of Organization Administration, the Ghana National Association of NAT headquarters here in Accra. And Kojo Krakeni is the Deputy Executive Secretary of the Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana. Gentlemen, once again, once we've gotten some information from the launch of the Nation Builders Corps, let us turn our attention quickly to that program. Now, Mr. Krakeni, again, this is an attempt to create jobs for Ghanaians. Now, can we describe this as strides that will indeed bring that kind of comfort for workers that we've been fighting for?
You mean the Builders Corps?
The Builders Corps.
I put something here. It's a respite for 3 years for those who are engaged.
So it's a stopgap measure.
Yes, and then after 3 years, you are off. Another group of people will come. So it's not a permanent job. If you are engaged, you should not be excited. You shouldn't be excited. What you should do within the 3 years that you are in this corps is to start thinking fast as to how to establish yourself. So that when the time is over here, then you can start your own job.
Is that not a problem?
It's a big problem because those who are already in permanent jobs are always, like you said, bemoaning what is going on. They are not satisfied with the salaries, they are not satisfied with the condition, other conditions of service, their allowances are not being paid, and then even the jobs, the resources for you to work with the equipment and then the logistics are not forthcoming. Now you have 3 years. It's like a national service extension, 3 years. So I will not be excited if I'm engaged that way. But it's a respite, just for a while. So in this period, you must be seriously thinking as to what to do. If it is mushroom you want to establish, if it is poultry, and you have, nobody should joke with it. If it is poultry, if it is maybe going to Techima to bring something down south to sell, you must quickly use the gains here to think and start something. Don't think of any permanent job after this. This is already, we read it, they say it's 3 years, so it's a national service for 3 years. That's how I can put it.
Richard, so if it's a stopgap measure, is that not where the problems, where Labour then gets worried because these persons, because they know that we're doing this for 3 years, might not necessarily give up their best?
That's very correct. What we would have wished for, and when I say we, those of us in education, is for the government to find means and ways and stabilize these jobs, especially against the fact that we know that about 40,000 vacancies exist in our classrooms.
The teaching field alone?
The teaching field alone.
40,000?
40,000. We have deficit. It's very pathetic that in this age and time, you go to a place and a whole basic school of primary 1 to 6 is being manned by one teacher. Meanwhile, we are aware that these are graduates, so that's what we are told. Yes, there is graduate unemployment they are trying to curb. There are many graduates who have finished University of Cape Coast and University of Education, Winneba. So why don't you find means and ways and then quickly stabilize them and give them full
Make
employment.
them permanent workers.
Regularize them.
To teach. If we are talking about economic growth and development, it starts from the classroom. It starts from the forming of the mind. And if these very things we are talking about, a child in this age and time is still left without a teacher, knows nothing of school activity is going on, then where do we stand as a nation? So if I had a wish, Mr. President, my special appeal is the segment of education, please.
Those who will go into
those
the
who go in the
sector.
teaching, you can make them permanent.
Engage those who are already with education.
It's always said that where there's a will, there's a way. If we, as a nation, we judge, we sit down, we look for the money. I know that about 15,000 teachers have been employed within this 2017, 2018, because the teachers who came out of colleges of education, they are just around that figure. Many of them have been stabilized, they have been given permanent employment, but we still have about 40,000 vacancies, like I'm saying. So for the segment of education, Mr. President, we pray that
will be your appeal.
That will be our appeal.
Mr. Krakeni, do you think, now we're just trying to look into the minds of the people who put this document together, because we don't have a total grasp of the whole document. Is it a check on the government purse, not to balloon the public wage? That is why perhaps we cannot get these persons to be permanent? Or what is it?
It's a very good question. We call it, you see, there are two devils. You are itching to industrialize. You are urged to develop. You want to get people happy. And then they are telling you, you can't engage to undertake those things.
IMF is in here?
Yes. You can't engage to undertake those things. Like he said, we have 40,000 vacancies in the classrooms. If you see the campaign messages of these governments or parties, as if all has been well during one tenure of office, but immediately after that, I've been following TV3's mission. See schools under 3. One teacher handling 3 classes collapsed together, merged. We are far away from what we are aiming at. If we want something, you cannot be afraid of the set of eyes, and you still want the head of the meat to eat. If we are afraid of the costs, then don't cry. We want to develop, and you can develop only through education, for example.
Sure.
So get the people. If you come to the civil service, if you look at what everybody say, be a professor or IMF expert or the president, Ghana's economy is being run by agriculture. 60% of our economy is agriculture. Okay. Go and check the offices that run the agriculture.
I'll come back to Mr. Krakeni, but let's quickly go back to Kumasi. And the models have been explained. Dr. Ibrahim Anya is from the Office of the Vice President. He's explaining the models of the Nation Builders Corps.
They will be deployed to assist in offering some kind of assistance to not only the flagship initiative under the Planting for Food and Jobs, but there are significant areas within the agricultural sector that they can play a very important role. In particular, we can look at the mechanization and engineering aspect, the extensive assistance. Currently, they attempt to get a lot of database in terms of the census, so agri statistics assistance, some things to do with the chemical inspectors, seed and fertilizers, vet assistance, data assistance, as well as assistantship within the agri and farm research institutes. And all these are areas that the module would intend to deploy some of the 100,000 people in the talent pool. Now, Civic Ghana is our governance module, and governance, we all recognize, is critical to our survival, and the intent would be to sort of enhance the delivery on the core mandate of some institutions, constitutional mandate of some institutions of state. And the way to enhance this is to utilize the talent from within the pool to make sure that they are able to support in areas such as the development efforts at the constituency and the local authorities. We will have civic officers who would have attention paid to tourism development, local government assistance in relation to the IT officers, and also a watchdog kind of activity to make sure that within the call centers and the Civic Ghana, they are able to deliver certain service in terms of the efficiency of certain public services. Revenue Ghana, Your Excellency, Mr. President, this is critical to most of the things that we intend to do in the country. For a lot of the flagship initiatives would have to be able to match the expenditure to the revenue, and so there is an intent to do something about broadening the revenue base. And Revenue Ghana intends to utilize the talent pool that we have within the country to be able to support the Ghana Revenue Authority to deliver on this. Now, it's very interesting, some of the profiled jobs under the Revenue Ghana. Currently, there is an ongoing campaign on tinning everyone, tax identification numbers within the GRA, and that is becoming something that we all have to engage with, as well as other tax campaigns, tax education, borders and customs, local authority engagement and liaison to improve the revenue base of those local authorities, and also things to do with the taxation in the property area. Your Excellencies, the other areas that we've looked at in relation to the modules is the Digitized Ghana. Now, digitization is a process that will deliver a lot of efficiency in our country. And currently, there are a lot of flagship initiatives, in particular, things to do with the national identification, the attempt to digitize all the legacy documents and the land administration, the birth records digitization, as well as attempts to digitize records within the Registrar General, so that we have a proper database to deal with the issues within the archival space. And the intent would be to utilize the talent pool to assist in the delivery of these services. Enterprise Ghana is critical to the survival of most of the schemes that we have looked at in the private sector. Now, government currently, under the flagship initiative of the One District, One Factory, the stimulus package under the Ministry of Trade and Industry, would gain some kind of comprehensive support in relation to workforce solution to support the delivery of these particular schemes. And these are the sort of modules that would deliver on the 100,000 jobs that the NAPCO trainees are supposed to be exposed to. Now, who qualifies to be on this? There are 7 modules, and those are modules that people can relate to in terms of their base qualification, if they are a degree or a diploma holder, which is what this is targeted to. It's open to all Ghanaians, but you must have discharged your national service obligation, and of course you must have a diploma or a degree, because it's targeted at tertiary institutions. Then what happens? The recruitment process. Upon the launch, His Excellency, the President would lead us through that, and upon the launch, we'll go through these processes. There will be an online portal to log all applications, and then a validation process would take place at the district offices, including an interview. Then, subsequently, a date will be fixed to train all the people that have been selected, and then we have placement onto the 7 modules that were outlined earlier on. Then what happens after 3 years? Well, we hope that there will be some kind of monitoring during the period of the 3 years, because this is key to the survival of the scheme. We intend to use digital or some kind of technology to assist with this. The other way to look at it is the collaboration with implementing agencies to deliver on a very skilled monitoring by having a physical presence at the locations that NAPCO trainees have been deployed. In terms of evaluation, there are certain standards that have been set, and we intend to evaluate against those standards, just so that by the time the trainees exit the scheme, they have some kind of skill that they have acquired in training, validated by institutions such as the COTVET, to make sure that they can use that for further learning as well. So what happens after 3 years? Some exit arrangements. NAPCO trainees will be provided with some kind of transfer in the very final 6 months of the scheme, and that will cover areas to do with their interest on where they would want to see themselves in the future in terms of clearer pathways in their career choices. Number one, we would look at retention issues in the area that they had been deployed to work for 3 years. They may seek employment elsewhere because they've acquired employable skills and they are now work ready to be deployed or seek employment elsewhere themselves. Some may pursue the enterprise route, which has to do with entrepreneurship and starting up their own businesses, in which case we also have institutions of state, such as the National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Plan, to assist with this. 100,000 graduates, there is a chance that the degree and diploma holders, some may transition into further learning, and we find that to be equally important in terms of further developing the skills that they have acquired. Your Excellency, Mr. President, that is in sum what the Nation Builders Corps is, and I thank you all very much for listening to this.
Right, and that was the explanation of the models of the Nation Builders Corps. And I guess you heard a lot, and my guess will take a look at some of the issues that were raised. So the governance model, the revenue model, the digitized Ghana, and all those, we'll take a look at them one by one. My guests are still here in the studio. Mr. Kojo Krakeni, Deputy Executive Secretary, ClockSAC. Richard Equity Kwamla Sagodo, he's the head of Organization and Administration at NAT headquarters in Accra. Right, so Mr. Krakeni, we left off, we're talking about why government would engage these persons permanently rather than putting them in 3 years. And from what we just heard, so in fact, the issue is that we don't have the resources to push these persons in as permanent workers. That's why we're going this way.
Yeah, I think that is the way we can all see it. And I'll describe it as unfortunate. The countries that we call the elsewhere, people speak in the studio say countries elsewhere, in other jurisdictions, in other countries, they close the doors for a certain number of years and fail to listen to the other outside world and develop themselves with the resources they have. They were determined, patriotic, and they were loyal, and they were sacrificing. But what we see here is that we wanted to do the things and we failed to put in the commitment. We are not committed. So if we want to engage people so that they help develop Ghana, then we should focus on it and look for money permanently and work with them. We don't say you can employ about 1 million in a year. But if you look at the education sector, and we still have 40,000 vacancies, and you are still afraid of resourcing it, then what are you crying for?
Is it simply being afraid, or the money is in there to pay these persons?
I know I don't want to look simplistic, but what I'm saying is that if Ghana wants to raise funds, they can raise funds for those 40,000 people to fill the classrooms.
How do we do it?
He knows it.
Richard, can Ghana raise
we
funds
have several
to employ
wastages.
40,000 people?
We have several wastages. Go to the tertiary institutions, see the IGFs, and check how much of it goes to the consolidated fund. There are other things that politicians know they can block those leakages and raise fund. I'm telling you.
Let me pick Richard's brain.
Thank you. Talking about raising of funds, yes, drawing from the example, the recent example of the Akuffo Teaching Hospital, where as a nation we're able to raise a whole mother and care unit within, was it 6 months or so? So yes, we can raise funds, but I see it as beyond that. Let's go back to our curriculum. The curriculum that we are using for the educational system from KG. It is very sad to note that a curriculum will take a person from KG through to university, and the person may not be able to do anything on his own. That is why some of us are sad about the 1987 reforms of the Jubo Commission or Committee, where the hand, the head, and the heart is to be developed. The policy came all right, but the facilities, the equipment, the logistics. Let's go back to our educational system. Let's structure in such a way that...
All right, Richard, pardon me, I have to cut you once again. The president is about to address the gathering there. Let's go back to the venue and listen to the president.
the National Security Advisor, Deputy Ashanti Regional Minister of State, Deputy Ministers of State, Kumasi Metropolitan Chief Executive, Chairperson of the University Council, Pro-Vice Chancellor and members of the faculty, students of the university, esteemed clergy, the non-traditional rulers, fellow Ghanaians, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy you have all been able to join us this morning on what is an important occasion. That is the launch of the Nation Builders Corps, which will employ in this year alone 100,000 young men and women to assist in the public sector service delivery needs of our country. Ladies and gentlemen, the grim story of youth unemployment has been a tragic part of our lives for far too long in Ghana. Data from the renowned Institute of Statistics, Social and Economic Research, ISA, published in March 2017, revealed that only 10% of graduates found jobs after their first year of completing school, and that it takes up to 10 years for a large number of graduates to secure employment. The World Bank's Landscape for Jobs in Ghana report, published in 2016, revealed that about 48% of the youth in the country, that is those who are between the ages of 15 and 24 years, do not have jobs. Indeed, the situation has been worsened by the ban placed on public sector employment by the International Monetary Fund. I believe we all know who and what occasioned that ban. Today, the number of graduates being produced by tertiary institutions has outstripped the number of available job openings. I was alarmed late last year to learn that 250,000 young persons applied to be placed in the Youth Employment Agency's internship model when the available spaces were only 5,000 people. The Ghana Revenue Authority also advertised for various categories of staff. Some 59,951 responded to the advertisement, out of which 20,177 met the requirements, and the available vacancies were 300. It is important that we do things differently if we are going to banish the specter of desperation and restore hope and dignity to our youth. Our ultimate goal as a government is to grow the economy rapidly so that together with the private sector, we will absorb our teeming unemployed youth. That is why I'm using the opportunity offered by the significance of this day, May Day, to launch an initiative which, while lending itself to the symbolic nature of today, will have a positive practical impact on the lives of the citizens of this country. Ladies and gentlemen, in this year's Jumapa budget, I gave an indication that a new employment scheme will be launched to tackle the issue of the growing number of graduates exiting our tertiary institutions with no job placements in sight. This new initiative is the Nation Builders Corps, simply referred to as NABCO. As a scheme, NABCO's central focus would be to create employment avenues and opportunities for young people who hold diplomas or degrees from accredited tertiary institutions. Central to the objectives of this scheme would be to engage the raw talent of our graduates and equip them with skills through a process of value addition and training. It is a widely acknowledged fact that academic qualifications, be it diplomas or degrees, do not always incline a graduate to perform and deliver productive output at the workplace. NABCO will enhance the dignity and self-esteem of our graduates and will also present them with the added benefit of efficiency and effectiveness in the delivery of some essential public services. By the time our NABCO trainees exit the scheme, the requisite work readiness skills and experience, often deemed a barrier to the employment as fresh graduates, would have been resolved. How will NABCO work? NABCO will be the vehicle to deliver 100,000 jobs in 7 prioritized areas defined as the following modules: Educate Ghana, Heal Ghana, Feed Ghana, Revenue Ghana, Digitize Ghana, Enterprise Ghana, and Civic Ghana. Module qualification and recruitment processes and all the essential criteria, along with detailed information, are all available on the website of NABCO, from where initial applications will be received. The website's address for the receipt of applications and any other information you may need on the scheme is www.nabco.government.gh. After the end of this ceremony, the web portal will be open to begin receiving applications from graduates as long as they are citizens of this country and have duly discharged their national service obligations. There are no charges or costs and no paper application forms to fill. Everything is being done online and on the website of NABCO. This will optimize efficiency in the processing of applications, as well as afford the opportunity for checking with other available national databases to prevent fraud. With the application processes closing on 1st June 2018, it is expected that by 1st July, selected applicants will become this country's first NABCO trainees. Who will receive training and will be deployed to commence their work by 1st August 2018. For the attainment of equity and fairness, every constituency has a stated allocation out of the 100,000 placements. This has been worked out based on a weighting formula, thus ensuring all constituencies, large or small, adequate representation. With the ultimate aim being to help guarantee employability of these graduates, placements would last for a period of 3 years, earning them a stipend of 700 Ghana cedis every month. This is a modest but important beginning towards the restoration of their dignity. Beneficiaries will also receive continuous skills training and retraining on the job, both to equip and guide their future career paths. The security offered by this graduate employment scheme implies that graduates have sufficient time to make prudent choices on their future entry onto the labor market, on potential interests of starting businesses and entrepreneurship, and even on definitive clarity on further learning options, guided by experiences and the benefit of exposure to the world of work. NABCO is placing particular emphasis on some essential core values that are key to building and transforming a nation, and which will be imparted to beneficiaries. Values such as integrity, professionalism, hard work, patriotism, and good customer relations are deemed crucial for any nation to achieve significant output from the productive efforts of its workforce. In establishing performance indicators and standards for NABCO trainees, the scheme will deliberately target evaluative efforts of them to ensure the trainees exit comprehensively preferred for the labor market. Ladies and gentlemen, I hear you asking, what is going to be done about persons who do not have diplomas or degrees? The answer is this. NABCO is freeing up the Youth Employment Agency, YEA, of the burden of dealing with everything to do with employment amongst the youth, especially graduates. NABCO is granting YEA extra absorptive capacity to concentrate on non-graduates. YEA will also recruit 80,000 non-graduates this year. Whilst NABCO commences recruitment of 100,000 graduates. Government's commitment to job creation will not end here, but will be accelerated through the implementation of our flagship programs of One District, One Factory, One Village, One Dam, and the program for planting for food and jobs. We're also creating an enabling economic environment for the private sector to thrive, which will drive in investment, foreign and domestic, and thereby help create jobs. I thank my brilliant, hard-working Vice President, Alhaji Dr. Muhammadu Bawumia, who has led this effort tirelessly, and all those who contributed immeasurably to making this day possible. To all our young graduates who qualified to enter this scheme, NABCO is yours. Own it and help something meaningful and fulfillment happen for yourselves and for your country. Be proud to say, I am a nation builder. And this country will be thankful to you too for rising up to the challenge. I believe very strongly that Ghana is in the cusp of a bold new beginning, which will repudiate the recent culture of failure. Accordingly, I declare the Nation Builders Corps, NABCO, duly launched. Once again, for the receipt of applications and any other information you may need on the scheme is www.nabco.gov.gh. I repeat, www.napco.gov.gh. I wish you all a happy May Day celebration. May God bless us all in our homeland land and make our great strong. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.
And so that was the official launch of the Nation Builders Corps. 1st August 2018 is the beginning of these young men and women who get the opportunity to start work. We're told that application closes on the 1st of June. And the training begins on 1st July. On 1st August, these young ones are expected to be at the various duty posts. Let me come back to my guest here in the studio, Deputy Executive Secretary of CLOCSAC, Kojo Krakeni, and Richard Equity Komla Sagodo, Head of Organization and Administration at NAT Headquarters in Accra. So the launch is being made. Richard, so this is what will be the beginning of the provision of employment for young ones. We're very convinced that we'll achieve the results we're aiming at.
Yes, whatever it is, something is better than nothing, as the saying goes. So this can go quite a long way to prevent crime, upsurge of crime. Once they are occupied in these various ways, they will spend the greater part of the day over there. They will no more 100% be burdens on their parents who have paid lumps of sums of school fees. They will be having something small, at least for their personal effects. They can learn something. Those of them who want to learn, they can learn something from the various segments they are going into. That being said, like I've already intimated, it would have been fine if we stabilize some of the areas and we made them into permanent jobs. After all, many of them have the qualified, the prerequisites, the qualifications. They have the skills. They have the skills. They have the knowledge to go into full-time job. But as we are not yet there, I think we can start. It's better to start from somewhere than not to start. Nothing at all. And this is where, if you permit me, I'll go back to the issue of curriculum. If our curriculum were properly strategized, by the time a student leaves the university level, he or she might have equipped himself or herself with something, either with a skill or with a particular knowledge upon which he or she will be relying. And in some cases, the person will be so much versed in it that she may not or he may not even want to go into the public sector. Quickly, she enters and then establishes herself into the private sector and grows business, creates a whole empire for himself. So it's still good that I know that there are some plans to review our curriculum, but how far it has gone, I can't tell. But I think it's an area.
It's a good beginning.
A good beginning.
All right. Mr. Krakeni, is this a modest but important beginning as put out there by the president?
Yeah. That is how we have to say it. But if you want to go further and build Ghana permanently, then this is a period for our youth, 100,000 of them, to develop skills, to be independent, so that the next batch that will come will add on. If we are going to leave the 3 years, after the 3 years, and come back looking for jobs, then this modest beginning is, like I continue to say, an extension of the national service from 1 year to 4 years.
So the key thing is for them to acquire the skills.
Yes. Acquire
life skills. On the 3-year thing.
Yes. And be able to boldly start something, no matter how small. They said it, no matter how small. Yeah. If you go back to the private sector, those who prepare the choppers, those who do the restaurants, those who run hotels and hospitality facilities, they depend on certain things. Basic. So we should capture those areas.
The youth employment program can be said to have aimed at the same thing, but really it didn't work.
Yeah.
A chunk of them get out there, and there is nothing.
Yeah, he said something about curriculum. And I was also saying something during the break that we catch them young. A skill or a discipline is not done to somebody. Instill a discipline in the person who is already an adult. It's difficult. But the person must grow with it to do certain things on his own. So, if the person does not focus, is not committed to developing himself, further skills, apart from the academic skills, then you continue to be dependent on the society which has nothing to offer. But if the person knows that he can do certain things, I have people who are in the public sector, seriously speaking, they came to take loans from CROSAC, and they have developed other skills, other things elsewhere. Some people are into beads. You know beads, that's one.
Beads making.
Some people have developed salons and employ people. So if the person is not focused on being on his own, but he's tuned to be on somebody, to be employed by somebody, then the YEA, the National Service, then the current one that we are launching today, will be the same value, and gaining nothing at the end of it. And they'll come back to add on to the unemployment large numbers.
100,000 in, 100,000 out.
Yes. So we should find a way of orientating them properly. We should focus them, weekend courses for them. If you go to Akuffo Addo, there are people who are training people in grass cutter keeping. I keep saying it too. Every chop bar has a grass cutter in the soup.
Yeah. Richard, okay, so we're wrapping up our conversation. Today is May Day. Let me give you the chance to wish workers happy May Day, and then we'll wrap up.
Hi, workers over there. More grease to your elbows. Despite your sacrifices, let's keep on the battle. Let's work hard. In hard working, there is benefits for all of us to enjoy at a later time.
Mr. Krakeni.
Yeah. Good morning, CROSAC members, indefatigable, hard-working guys. Keep on working hard, but be cautious to work conscientiously, keep to the rules, and then God will reward us. The smiles will be in the faces of you, not only you, but your family. That is where you are glorifying God. Work hard and train your children to be independent. Thank you.
I'm grateful. He is a Deputy Executive Secretary of the Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana, Kojo Krakeni. And I also had Richard Equity Komla Sagodo. He is the Head of Organization and Administration at the Ghana National Association of Teachers, NAT headquarters in Accra. Thanks so much for having stayed there for us for an extension of New Day. We're grateful. We wish all workers a happy May Day. Stay right here on TV3. There's more coming up. Good morning once again.